What's up everybody, we're back with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at the Council of Blood on Mythic difficulty. I'll be going over most of the mechanics, how to deal with them, and our overall tactic for this fight. So for this encounter we went with 2 tanks, 5 healers and 13 DPS. With more gear you might be able to drop a healer, but the fight is very healing intense. Setup wise, nothing mandatory. Boomkins helps a lot later in the fight with clearing ads. DK's anti-magic zone is great, and gateways are always helpful, but I wouldn't say any of those are mandatory. So what's new on Mythic? Well, for starters, there's the Dancing Fever. Targets 5 random players and applies 3 stacks of Dancing Fever to them that last for 30 seconds. Each time they jump, 1 stack is removed, and everyone in the raid takes about 5k shadow damage when they do jump. Now, if a player has a stack left of Dancing Fever when the 30-sec timer runs out, they instantly die. So pretty much stack raid cooldowns and bounce away. But I'll go over this a bit more later. Next out is the after images. When you defeat one of the council members, they will periodically pop up as an after image and use one of their abilities. Frida's after image will use Dreadbolt Volley, which still needs to be interrupted. Stavros will cast Dark Recital, St. Nicholas will summon Dutiful Attendance, and Stankie Gaming will stream on Twitch. So this means no matter what order you go for, you will always have to deal with Dreadbolt Volley, Dark Recital, and Dutiful Attendance. Other than that, as always, everything is scaled up, so more HP and more dam. And this alone actually changes the fight quite a bit, or rather this means you have to deal with all of the mechanics, and they're all pretty damn punishing. Due to this, when you push bosses to intermission matters a lot, but I'll go over all of our timings in a bit. Now, due to the nature of this fight, I'll go over this step by step and boss by boss, and how we dealt with their abilities. Now with that said, let's boogie on down. Ooh, the picture! You want to have 2 sets of 2 marks in a line like you can see in the picture. Skull and square is the first set, then star and triangle second set. These are used for the dark recitals. Most of phase 1 and 2, we tank bosses on skull, raid stacked on square. When dark recital goes out, players targeted by it goes to the right and moves together counterclockwise around the boss. Everyone else without the debuff takes a step to the left to avoid the puddles they spawn. Now this will continue throughout the fight, and you'll either do recitals on skull and square or later on star and green. Now the diamond X and moon mark is for the waltzing Venthyr in phase 2, just for calling safe spots. Now with that out of the way, set up an interrupt rotation for Baroness Frida. You'll need 3 players with backups for this. We used melee while Frida was alive and mostly ranged DPS for her after image in phase 2 and 3, so melee didn't have to run around a lot. They complain. If a cast goes off, it's pretty much a wipe. You might survive it, but then you'll probably have blown through every cooldown imaginable and you'll just die to the next Dancing Fever. So do make sure to interrupt. On pull, you want to tank bosses on skull and everyone be ready to blast as soon as possible. We tanked Stavros and Niklaus away in a corner for the first few seconds of the fight to make sure our boomers convokes actually hit Frida. This is simply due to the fact that there's a lot of tight DPS checks in order to get the best possible timings and overlaps, so we needed to squeeze out every drop of DPS possible. Now as soon as the convoke is done, drag Stavros and Niklaus back to skull, and the Frida tank taunts one of them. Now for you tanks out there, you want to swap on 2 stacks of either lunge or riposte. Riposte? They do smack quite a bit. When you're tanking Stavros, you want to stand at the side of skull and sidestep out anytime he casts his lunge to make sure he charges in front of skull so no one ever gets hit. Unlike a certain brewmaster on the first night of progression, not mentioning any names. A few seconds into the fight, you get your first Dancing Fever, followed by Attendant and Dark Recital. Now for the Dancing Fever, it really is just jump in a staggered fashion and stack raid cooldowns during it. We had one of our healers keep track of this and simply said jump 1, 2, etc. to make sure everyone was healthy enough to survive each set of jumps. Now, as soon as the Dutiful Attendant spawns, you want to all range to swap to it instantly and melee once it gets in range. Now, I can't stress this enough, but the attendants, they need to die really fast. For example, we had our Boomkins pool resources before they spawned so they could just blast away as soon as they were in range. Like I said, the DPS check is very tight, so you really don't want boss to be immune for long. Now, for the Dark Recital, you deal with it just like I mentioned earlier. earlier. Dark Recital targets go to the right and move counterclockwise around boss. Rest of the raid moves to the left a bit. Now the goal here is to push Frida to 50% before the second attendant spawns, so you don't have to deal with the second dancing fever before intermission either. It makes all the timings a little bit easier and you have more cooldown, so push Frida before its second attendant. Following this intermission, you'll instantly get a new attendant and dancing fever, so DPS be ready to blast the attendant. You want to finish off Frida a bit after the third dancing fever. However, a bit before this, you want to move Frida closer to where we have our star mark, kinda between star and square, and finish her off there. This is just so her after image spawns a bit closer for the last phase. You'll get a recital before the third dancing fever, and we move raid and boss after that recital to kill off Frida. Now as soon as she's dead, start nuking Stavros, keep bosses on star and raid on triangle for this recital. Shortly after this, St. Niklaus will start spawning the Dredger servants, and you'll start getting waltzing Venthirs to deal with. You still want focus DPS on Stavros, but cleave down servants that are in range. DKs should grip when possible. And Boomkins should pad away with Starfall, so you don't get overrun by servants. That's what our Boomkin told us, that's why he's starfalling. After your first recital on green and star mark, you get your first waltzing Venthirs. Now as soon as the recital is done, move boss and raid to where we have our moon mark. Use Roar or Windrush if you have it. A few seconds after, you get your fourth set of dancing fever. Now as soon as you've dealt with it, you want to move boss and raid back to skull and square position. And we push Stavros to 50% before the next recital. You can hold DPS a bit, deal with the recital and attendant to avoid dealing with an attendant as soon as intermission is over. But that didn't seem to make a big difference for us at this point at least. So we went with just pushing before the recital. Following this intermission, raid stacks on blue, bosses on skull, hold all DPS cooldowns as you'll need them in the start of phase 3, which is roughly within 2 minutes, so anything less than 2 minutes should be fine. You'll get your 5th set of dancing fever, a new set of waltzing Ventir at the same time after this intermission, so wait for the Ventirs to spawn and start dancing, then move to moon mark again and deal with the dancing fevers over there. And after it's done, back to square and skull. Following this, dark recital into your 6th set of dancing fever and new Ventirs. Now for this, you deal with recital, wait for the Ventirs to spawn, then move raid back to green mark again, and you'll stay at this position for the rest of the encounter. Now following this dancing fever, which is number 6, you'll get a new attendant. You want to finish off Stavros directly after this attendant, or any attendant really. So if you need to stop DPS to make sure you get the attendant, then do that, because you do not want to start DPSing Niklaus while he's immune. So it's really important, kill an attendant, then finish Stavros. Now, for the last phase, you'll start getting veteran Stone Guard ads on top of everything else, and they do not play nice. At all. Now there's a few different ways to deal with them, and we tried most of them, but the two that seems the best is either full on kite or kill the first Stone Guard. We settled on killing the first one as it's what worked best for us, but you can have one tank pick up a Stone Guard and kite like a madman. I'm fairly certain this is only possible as a Vengeance Demon Hunter, possibly as Brewmaster. Either way, you will need help with it in form of Windrush, Roars, Priest Grips, Gateways, you name it, just get on out there. But I'll go over this part from our point of view, which was killing the first one instead. So back to it! As soon as Stavros dies, you want to pop pretty much everything. All DPS cooldowns, Bloodlust, we saved second combat pot so we could use it after the third intermission. But apart from that, use everything. Full nuke on Niklaus until the first Stone Guard spawns. Now when it spawns, everyone swaps to it and full nuke. It needs to die really fast, within like less than 15 seconds of it spawning. You'll get an attendant spawn during this. Don't swap to it, just cleave and swap to it if it's still alive after the Stone Guard is dead. Following this, deal with dancing fever, recitals, and attendance as before. The goal here is to push Niklaus to 50% as soon as the second Stone Guard spawns. Doing so will make it inactive, but you can still nuke it. So range and any melee lucky enough to be near it needs to finish it off during this intermission. If you push boss to 50% before the second Stone Guard, you get it as soon as you get out of intermission, which is less than ideal. But if you do kill second Stone Guard during intermission, you'll get around 30 to 35 seconds without without one following the intermission, which is good. Now keep in mind, following this intermission, you'll most likely get an attendant spawning instantly and dark recital just a few seconds after it, so make sure you're in position to deal with this recital. And after this, it's pretty much an all-out burn. You will get one stone guard, and you can either kite or kill it. We went with kiting as the boss was on low health, but if you can't kite it, simply have everyone once again swap to the first one, hard burn, if possible save cooldowns following the intermission for this, so you can kill it fast. Now tanks, keep in mind that if one of you is kiting the stone guard, the other tank will have to deal with some insane amount of tank damage due to all the riposte stacks. So when you're above 4 stacks, you will probably need defensive cooldowns for each and every one following that, as well as being close to full health, so make sure to plan ahead with your cooldowns and externals for this. And yeah, just keep nuking St. Nicholas, deal with Dancing Fever and Recital in the same way as always, and pray that Nicholas dies before both of your tanks do.
And lastly, don't forget to interrupt Frida's after image.
And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty hectic fight, but once you get the dance down, the first 9 minutes aren't that bad. The last minute, however, is pretty rough, to be fair. But if you follow these timings and manage the DPS checks, it gets a lot easier and everything lines up pretty well. Now, if you have any questions at all about this encounter, hit me up in the comments or become a patron and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can find Raid Weakauras, healing notes, and a ton of useful people who will help you out with most things raiding related. Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. I'm also streaming all of our progression on Twitch, so make sure to check that out Mondays and Tuesdays. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.